Hello there. It is a Tuesday afternoon in early August, and I am outside Korea University Station on the line 6 of the Seoul subway system. And Korea University is right across the street from me. There's a pretty large campus that goes off in that direction. That was founded in like 1905 as a college, and it became a university. It had a different name originally, but it became Korea University after World War II. And in Korean, the name is Goryeo Daehakyo. Goryeo is the name. Daehakyo means university, but it's called Goryeo in Korean and Korea in English, Korea University. And that's because the English name of the country, Korea, is derived from that Korean name, Goryeo. Goryeo was a kingdom about 1,000 years ago that just preceded the Joseon dynasty, which started in the late 14th century. Goryeo was founded in the early 10th century. And actually, the name goes back further than that. There was a couple thousand years ago, there was another kingdom called Goguryeo. I always have trouble pronouncing that name, Goguryeo, when I say it fast. But Goryeo was a short form of Goguryeo, and they used that name later in that kingdom. But Goryeo was a 10th century Korean kingdom. It lasted about almost 500 years, just shy of 500 years, when the Joseon dynasty took its place. So that name, Goryeo, made its way into English apparently in the 17th century as Corea, and over time it just became Korea in English. And so that's where the name Korea comes from, and that's why Goryeo University is called Korea University in English. But I haven't come out here today to talk about Korea University. That's just my starting point. I'm actually going to take you on a bit of a walk. Last week, I came out for one of my daily walks, and I was walking toward Cheongnyangni Station. And I decided to cut through the big market there. There's actually more than one market. It's multiple markets, but I think it originally started as one, the Gyeongdong Market. But I cut through there and came out of the backside, and I realized I've never walked the streets behind the market area before. And that's a huge market, by the way. Like I said, more than one market, but it's a huge area. So I had never been behind it. So I just cut down those streets, and I found some pretty, well, what I think is interesting stuff in the neighborhoods back there, and I'm going to show you that. That's why I brought you out here today. And the interesting stuff starts right here. I don't know why this appeals to me so much, but check this out. Something about these buildings lining the stream here, I don't know, it just, and with that wall, that ivy-colored wall below them, I don't know, I just love the way that looks, especially with those high-rise apartments in the background. The buildings are all older, yeah? These buildings here along the stream. And they're all, 2 or 3 stories mostly. I think that one down there might be 4 stories. But yeah, it's just something about this just, I don't know, feels unique. The style of the buildings here along the stream. I can't think of another view quite like this one in Seoul. I mean, there are, of course, streams of buildings next to them, but I mean, just this style of buildings, all the different 1 or 2 and 3 story buildings, older buildings like this. I don't know. I just really enjoy that. But there's the real stuff I wanted to show you is back here on these neighborhood back streets. And that's where we're going to go right now. Okay, so this is the first thing I really wanted to show you, this little area of the neighborhood right here that we're about to walk into. This is almost like walking back in time 50 or 60 years. And it gets even more interesting as we go deeper into it, because there's just these rows and rows and rows of old residences. But you see this shop here, little small neighborhood mom and pop shop. Those things have disappeared around the city. They used to be, in every little neighborhood. I used to shop at places like that, in Hongneung and Itaewon, but they're all gone. And many of these buildings around here were built in the 1960s. In fact, many of them were built in the year 1960, not just the decades, but in that year. Apparently, there was a big development project at the time. And yeah, I don't know, about these taller buildings here, but these lower buildings up ahead, many of them were built in the 1960s. And it just goes on and on, row after row after row for like a whole block or two here. And the crazy thing is, I was looking on a real estate map to see how much these properties are selling for. And the cheapest one I could find was for about 200 million won, which I got to look at my notes here. At the current exchange rate, as of this morning, is roughly about almost $146,000, right? And the most expensive place I found, one of these old buildings here, was 918 million won, which is about $670,000. Now, the thing about exchange rates, right? I'm always leery about talking about dollar values of Korean won, because exchange rates fluctuate frequently. And when you're talking about large sums like this, small fluctuations can result in large differences in the outcome. And I'm talking about buildings like this, right? Like this right here. These kinds of buildings, these are the buildings I'm talking about that are selling for $145,000 or $670,000. Almost $1 million worth of Big Macs for the most expensive one. What I'm noticing as I walk through here and look at these houses is a lot of them are in really good condition. In some parts of Seoul, you'll see old buildings like this, and they're run down and dilapidated and falling apart. And, you do see, I have seen some of that here in this area. Like right here, we've got some peeling paint, but I don't see many houses in really bad shape. They've all been maintained, it looks like. We've got some cracks, but not as bad as I would expect. I get the sense that when these buildings were first constructed in the 1960s, they probably would not have been cheap. That's just the sense I get. They probably would have been, really nice for the time. I don't know that for sure. I'm just speculating, but that's just what it seems like. And when I was here last week, the weather was a little cooler, and there were a lot more people out sitting outside their buildings and walking down the street. And it was also a little later in the day, and they pretty much everybody was elderly. Just about everybody I saw was elderly. The only young people I saw were walking with elderly people, their parents or grandparents, I would guess. Yeah, so I believe that we're in Cheongyangni-dong right now, the Cheongyangni neighborhood, but we crossed the street, and just over that way we're gonna head off over in that direction. That is Jegi-dong. On that walk last week, I stumbled on this street here, and it feels very much like it came out of a country town here in Korea. And you look at that contrast with the tower apartments there in the distance. So this is basically just, I don't know, a little neighborhood market. So you can still find little streets like this, around the city in different places. Areas that feel like they don't really belong in a big modern city like Seoul, something like out of the countryside. But then we get to this section here, and check this out. All these red X's. This is slated for demolition, and there's a whole block of stuff here that's slated for demolition. And we're going to go down this street right here and check some of it out. Now, when I was filming my video on Yangnyeong outside of Yongsan Station, I talked about how there used to be a little market that, I remembered a lot of tarps and ropes and aluminum and stuff like that. This is very reminiscent of that. You see all these tarps stretched across the way, and the poles and the aluminum roofs. I don't see so much aluminum siding as I saw at that other market, but yeah, but this is still kind of very similar. So I guess this whole street, used to be a market. Probably a continuation of that up there. But it's all now slated for demolition. And there's still some shops open. Oh, this smells good. I smell sesame oil here. This place makes different kinds of cooking oils. Let's go through here and check this out. Yeah, this entire neighborhood is slated for demolition. And I read that, okay, we're in Jegi-dong, and Jegi-dong is in Dongdaemun-gu, Dongdaemun district. And I read that there is going to be some massive development here in Dongdaemun to make it a modern city in a city. It's a kind of an initiative of the mayor of Dongdaemun, and it's something he worked on in his first 2 years in office. So from what I can tell, the Seoul city government wants to construct 10 new Hanok villages around the city. And they opened up a bidding process for locations and such. And so one of the locations picked was Dongdaemun, Jegi-dong. So when I first saw that this area had been slated for demolition, I assumed that this was going to be the site of the new Hanok village. But it looks like that may be wrong. It's a bad assumption. Because I read in one article, they had an actual address, said it's going to be around this address. And so I'll take you to that area a little bit later. So if that's true, then it's a little strange, but I'll I'll show that to you anyway. But yeah, I don't know what's going to be here. If this isn't the site of the Hanok village, then I don't know what's going here.
Look around. Where do you belong? Don't be afraid. You're not the only one. Don't let the day go by. Don't let it end. Don't let a day go by in doubt. The answer lies within. Life is short, so learn from your mistakes and stand behind the choices that you make. Face each day with both eyes open wide answer lies within.
All right, so now we're entering an area that is just like huge space of different kinds of markets. I guess there's a wholesale market, there's a fish market, there's agricultural and fish market, and I don't know, it's just Oriental medicines, there's all kinds of stuff here. And you can see them listed on the map as individual markets, but I think generally the whole area is referred to as Gyeongdong Shijang, Gyeongdong Market, and sometimes just Cheongnyangni Market. Some people say that, but yeah, it's actually several different markets now. But it started as Gyeongdong Market. Ingredients for Oriental medicine would come into Seoul from northern Gyeonggi-do, Gyeonggi province, and from Gangwon-do, Gangwon province, and they would come in by train and naturally stop at Cheongnyangni Station. That was kind of the hub there, coming in from the northern part of the country. And so this little Oriental medicine market started to grow up around the station, and they were just selling the ingredients. And then over time, you had Oriental medicine clinics come in, and then other people started selling other things, and this huge market just kind of grew organically from that original core of Oriental medicine vendors, the ingredients, for Oriental medicine. And today, there is a whole separate section for Oriental medicine that we're going to, get to. It's kind of a completely separate market now from Gyeongdong Market, and we're going to get to that in just a little bit. But yeah, there's just all kinds of stuff out here: fruits, sauces, cooking oils, fish, vegetables, you name it. You can probably find it here. So the name Gyeongdong basically means the East Seoul Market. Dong means east, and Gyeong comes from the name Gyeongsong, which is what the Japanese called Seoul when they were occupying Korea. And so Gyeongdong, Eastern Seoul Market. And you can see traces of that, Gyeongsong in different places, particularly in rail lines and highways. Like, for example, the expressway from Seoul to Busan is called the Gyeongbu Expressway. Yeah. So that name still lingers a bit. Okay, so we are at the edge, and you see here, it just, everywhere there's space, it just keeps going. But right over there, Seoul Yangnyeong-si, this is the primary Oriental medicine market now. I mentioned earlier that when Gyeongdong Shijang started, it started because of the ingredients for Oriental medicine. Well, today, most of that is found right over there. So it was here, I guess, that the Oriental medicine shops first started setting up, the ones selling the ingredients and stuff like this one. They're making Oriental medicine here. And this one, this shop looks like it's selling the ingredients. But yeah, so this just became the focal point of the Oriental medicine. And like I said, it used to be, from what I've read, it used to be considered part of Gyeongdong Market, but now it's completely separate. And wow, the smell here is just overpowering. So many things, and look at those deer antlers inside. I don't know if you can see them through the door. That's a big part of Oriental medicine, the Korean style anyway. Now, somewhere around here is something called the K-Medi Center. And I thought I would be able to walk right to it without looking at the map, but I may be wrong. I'll probably have to check it out in a minute. Oh, here it is. Yeah, this is it up here. All right. Yeah, I guess this used to be the site of a psychiatric hospital, I think, and now it's the K-Medi Center. And this is a place it's devoted to Oriental medicine. They have a museum, they have lessons teaching you how to make Oriental medicine, and they have a clinic where they'll actually treat you, and it's supposed to be low cost and available to anybody. And I think they want to promote it as kind of a tourism thing. And here it is, K-Medi Center, Seoul K-Medi Center, huge place. And what I'm trying to understand, and I'm a little confused about, is when I was trying to look up the site for the planned Hongneung Village, the article that listed an address listed this as an address, the address of the K-Medi Center, and said that the Hongneung Village was going to be built around this. Now, in one way, okay, I understand that, it's got the Hongneung roof and everything, but I mean, come on, all these Oriental medicine shops here in the market, are they going to demolish those? No way. I don't get that. That's why I think it's more likely that that area we were in earlier that's getting demolished, that seems like a site for a good site for a Hongneung Village. I mean, what else are they going to put there? High-rise apartments or something? I don't know. So I wasn't able to dig up all that information successfully before I came out here to film the video. So if anybody knows exactly where the Jegi-dong Hongneung Village is going to be built, I appreciate it if you'd let me know in the comments. I'm really curious about it. I just can't imagine that they build it here and tear down all these shops that are part of this market. That just doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't look like anything's getting ready to close down, yeah? So, yeah, I'd appreciate a word about that. All right, so right behind me here is Cheongnyangni Station. Now, this has been here for a long time. There's been a railway station here for probably as long as there's been a railway. And it was the subway station here just beneath us on line 1. This was one of the first subway stations to open in Seoul, along with Seoul Station. I mentioned that in a previous video. It was a limited section of line 1 between Cheongnyangni Station and Seoul Station that originally opened in 1970 something. And since then, there have been other subway lines constructed that come here now. The Gyeonggi-Jungwon line goes through here. The what's it called? The Suin-Gundong line comes through here. You've got a couple of different KTX lines, the express train. You've got the ITX comes through here, and now there's work being done on the Great Train Express. There's 3 or 4 lines for that. 2 of those are going to come through here, lines B and C, GTX-B, GTX-C, and those are connecting different parts of Korea with Seoul. And the Dongdaemun government wants to make this a transport hub, just beyond what's already here, beyond the GTX. They're also talking about UAMs. Now, I had never heard of UAMs until very recently, but it's urban air mobility. And they want to have a urban air mobility vehicle port here, launch pad, landing pad, whatever you want to call it. And so there's some research being done. There's a Korean company, startup, that is doing work on a UAM vehicle. There is research being done by Korean Air. You know Korean Airlines, the Korean Air group, I guess, the chaebol, if that's what they are. They're doing work on, I guess, processes and systems for a UAM network. So the Dongdaemun government is talking about putting a UAM hub here at Cheongyangni, and wow, it's like we're rapidly moving into the future, it seems. But yeah, the other thing is they're going to connect, like I said, they're going to bring in all these pedestrian bridges, connect the train station with the markets, and I don't know what all that's going to look like. From what I'm reading, they're just going to be raised platforms, kind of like what you see at Seoul Plaza that I walked on in a video a little while back. And they also want to modernize the facilities at the markets, throw in a bunch of English, and basically make it more tourist friendly, because they want to increase tourism to this area. So I guess inevitably they're going to kill some of the character that the market has, but that is what it is. So there's going to be massive changes here, and I'm honestly looking forward to see what comes of it. But there's this expression in Korean, Cheongnyangni-dong, which basically means dramatic change, massive transformation. I've seen it translated as creating heaven and earth. But the Dongdaemun government has coined a term, it's a play on words, the Cheongyang-gebyeok, right? Instead of Cheonji-gebyeok, it's the Cheongyang-gebyeok for Cheongyangni. So Cheongyang-gebyeok is the massive transformation of not just Cheongyangni, but the Dongdaemun district, Jegi-dong and Cheongnyangni-dong and whatever else they're doing. They're doing some other stuff around over that way. They've got a new library that they brought in, and they've sold some kind of briquette factory or something to replace it with that. I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff going on here. So big changes coming to Dongdaemun-gu in the future over the next few years. So if you are visiting Korea soon and you want to see these markets and all these little neighborhoods I showed you before things start drastically changing, then I suggest you get over here soon. So that's all I have for today. Thank you as always for watching, liking, and subscribing, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Don't let a day go by in doubt. The answer